So, right now, we're talking about our primary relationships today and the roles that we place ourselves in. And because I have such a short amount of time, I really sat with what can we really dig our teeth into in this discussion? And what I thought I would do is just discuss the dynamic of the most typical relationship roles that I see in romantic relationships through the couples work that we do. Now, I have to tell you, we do couples work at the end of one person doing their deep inner trauma healing work. So at the end, we bring the partner in and then we work whatever hasn't shifted when the primary person moved back into their heart. Because we come into our relationship through our trauma bonds, right? And we take these roles from childhood trauma and childhood trauma patterns, and we just like whoever fits into that role, we attract into our lives. And then through that relationship, we have the opportunity to heal that role and to heal our whole childhood trauma through the conflict that's showing up in that projection space. So for me, I see romantic and long-term relationship to be a playground and a mirror for our work, always. And when someone comes to me and says, I need to do trauma work, I'm about to leave my job or leave my husband, I'm like, hold up, wait a minute, don't do that yet. Let's see if we can get you neutral and not running or fighting or flighting or any of those. Let's see if we can get you to a space where you're so sovereign and solid within yourself that you could go or you can stay or you can go. Why would I do that? Because what we want is for us to get to a place that no matter where we are, we're connected to our bliss. And that makes our decisions come to a place of chocolate or vanilla. I prefer vanilla today. I prefer chocolate rather than if I stay in this relationship one more day, I feel like I'm going to die. Does that make sense? So if we're in a situation like that, we can use that reactivity to heal those unhealed parts of ourselves that got us in that relationship. Why? Because otherwise we leave that relationship, we will go manifest that same relationship with another character. And I used to be a management consultant. I used to do efficiency consultant to the World Bank, the IMF, and to the Girl Scouts and cybersecurity offices. And efficiency is one of my values in life. And it just feels inefficient to go recreate that relationship somewhere else when you can heal it right here and then release the relationship if it feels right or true. Okay, so there is a very consistent relationship pattern that I see. And if you go to last week's love and relationships, you'll see we talked about how we outsource our chakras, right? So if I have a weak root chakra and I see, oh, my husband over there looks nice and grounded, or that guy over there looks nice and grounded, I think I'm going to make him my husband because then I can have some nice grounded root chakra and I'll just outsource mine. And then I never have to develop it in myself because I'll be dependent on his very consistent money making or his very consistent grounding or his very consistent nervous system. And then boom, it's all set, right? I outsourced it, except for the fact that there's a ton of fear that then lives in my body because I never developed it within myself. And therefore am always dependent. And in dependency relationships, there's nothing but fear because it's parasitic. I am only as grounded as my husband is, or I am only as grounded as long as he decides to stay with me. And that's not a very sovereign space to be in our relationships, right? So as long as we are outsourcing something, a chakra, a quality of ours that we haven't developed in ourselves, as long as we're outsourcing that, we're always going to have fear in our relationship. We're always going to feel independent and we'll be in a place of dependence. And reality, in our relationships, we need to move from dependence to independence, sovereignty, solid, wholeness, so we can eventually move to interdependence, which is I'm whole and you're whole, and I give from my overflow and you're giving from your overflow. And eventually we can be solid in a solid exchange where I don't need anything from you because I'm whole and I can just exchange, and there's more free will. And the more free will we have in our relationships, the happier our relationships are. But the reality is most of us get into our partnerships, long-term partnerships, from a place of dependency. And let's just be reality-based about that. right? So we don't need to pretend we're enlightened, or we don't need to feel shitty if we're not enlightened. Most of us are not enlightened when we enter into our partnerships. But the question is, can I grow in this relationship? Can we grow? And can I use the relationship as a mirror of that which is yet to be healed within myself? So I love working with couples because it's the place where we can see so much exponential growth individually and as a couple. And then if there are kids involved, pow, really profound and impactful, because there's a lot of mirroring when we have children or when we have spouses or when we have close, intimate partnerships. The hardest person in my experience to heal is the person living on their own who does not have a built-in mirror in their house. Those built-in mirrors are our ticket to awakening and to healing and to growth. And so I always will push someone into a relationship when they're doing their healing, like, go, let's see what you're playing out. Let's see what role you play. Why? So that we can see what's still to be healed within relationships. Okay, so the most typical pattern that we see is someone with a strong will and or throat chakra, which is often someone with pitta or fire in their constitution. They're strong, they're decisive, they know what they want, they're really good at expressing it, they're fine controlling everything. They're usually the cooks in the house, but that's not always the case. Okay, so we have our strong provider or decider or whatever you want to call this, the strong, that fiery will oriented person. Here's what I want, here's how things have to go, here's how this is how everything's going to go. Okay, so there's the person with the strong will and or the strong voice. And then there's the accommodator or the caregiver or the fawner in the relationship, which is the person with the strong sacral and or heart. Now, this could be Vata or Kapha strength person, but they're usually a little bit more bendable, more pliable, more accommodating. Okay, so you can see how these two energies may couple up, because the person with less fire is going to be like, wow, that's so passionate and they're so decisive and they know what, I'm inspired by that. I like that. I want more of that in my life because I don't have that will, that fire. Okay. And the fire person is going to be like, oh, you're caring and you're compassionate and you're helpful and you're generous and you're accommodating. Wow, that's lovely. I love that. That's so nice. It feels so warm and cozy to be around. Okay. So if this dynamic is going on in one of your relationships, just take note. We'll call it the caregiver and the fire person. I usually call it the accommodator and the controller. So let's just call it that. The controllers usually get offended by that, but it's true. So what we often see is this person's pitta, this person has a strong will, they have a lot of deciding, they're really good at making sure people are meeting their needs. So they're good at taking in their relationship. I'm not making this bad. I am this person in my marriage, and I'm conscious in that. But if this person has so much fire and they lack consciousness, the thing about someone with pitta in relationship is that pitta fire, think of a wildfire in California. What does a wildfire do? It consumes more trees and more trees and more trees, and it gets bigger and hotter. That's the nature of fire. Fire doesn't stop spreading until there's sandbags or brush cleared out, right? Because this has a tendency to take up a lot of space and consume that which is around them. That's the nature of fire. That in and of itself is not a bad thing unless it's unconscious, and it can be destructive. Over here, we have either a lot of earth or air, a lack of fire that really values relationship very typically and cultivates relationship. Now, the way earth and air cultivate relationship is very different. Air is like, I'm moving around, I need my space, I'll take you to places, I'm going to pick this up for you. That's the way air does generosity in relationship. Whereas kapha is like, let's just sit down and eat and be with our people and craft and, you know, get and gather stuff or whatever. Right. So it's done in a very different way. I don't want to group this together, but it's typically either someone who's very vata oriented, air oriented, or kapha oriented over here, who's just accommodating and really preserving and prioritizing the relationship and the human in the relationship. This person over here is very results oriented. They forget about the people because fire doesn't think people, it just thinks about the result or what we're trying to get at. Objectives, personal objectives, because fire lives in the will chakra and the will chakra is about the ego. So they may seem more egoic, but this one's got ego too. This one's personal desires are to be taken care of or be provided for or to have a safe place or someone protecting them. It's just more of a covert inner need met. It looks more idealistic from this side, but there is a personal objective here for this fawner, and it's to keep themselves safe or provided for or financially secure or to get someone to decide or help control or organize or something. And I just want to even that out because this one gets a bad rep. The fiery person usually gets the bad rep. They're controlling or they're whatever. But this is a two-way street. And if it's not done consciously, it can get abusive. It can get fuzzy and it can go off the rails. But it's not due to any one specific energy if the relationship is set up correctly. So for the honeymoon stage of the relationship, this works really well. You decide, or you make the money, or you control things, or you direct things. I don't have to think. I just make sure everybody gets love, or everybody gets taken care of, or gets the food they need, or whatever. Okay, so this works really well at first. But then what happens is each person starts to lose themselves in the partnership. Here's how. It's easy to see it over here. This person becomes the caretaker. They lose connection to themselves. They forget to take care of themselves. They don't even know what they desire. Their biggest response is to fawn, and they lose all sense of I and self and me and what do I need and what is my care to me. However, it often gets blamed on this person because this person's needs are so loud and demanding. And so this will often show up as a victimization, and it's very subtle at first. And it worked because it worked at first during the honeymoon stage of the relationship, but then it doesn't, because you can't have a relationship if this person is not connected to themselves. If this person lost themselves, if this person doesn't know who they are anymore, you can't have a whole and strong relationship. Does that make sense? So this person makes themselves about their children, or makes themselves about the care of the house, or makes themselves about something else. And in doing so, they lose themselves. What happens when they lose themselves, they lose their voice, they lose their power, they lose who they are, they get confused. And then this wildfire can get bigger because this person's not losing themselves. And what happens is the relationship goes unconscious, so unconscious that it gets imbalanced. And this person may start to be entitled for this person to do for them. And this person might feel like this person should be showing up in a certain way. And this person may get power that they shouldn't have because this person abnegated responsibility for their lives. I need head nods to see if you guys are tracking with me. Does this make sense? So this person feels less and less power. The power gets shifted. And then one day this person wakes up and are like, what the fuck? You have taken so much power in my life. I need to set some boundaries with you and take my power back. You have abused me. But what happened is they didn't realize the dynamic in the relationship is what created this. We always have equal responsibility for what we attract in the relationship. Now, please know, I'm not saying this person deserves being abused. I'm not saying this isn't really bad when it gets like this. Please know that I'm not saying that. But there's so much in modern psychology today about the narcissists and recovery from narcissism and how victimized I am because of the narcissist. But a narcissist does not have power. And by narcissist, I mean someone with pitta-imbalanced who was given too much power that they shouldn't have had. That person does not get power unless you unconsciously may have given them your power. What was I exchanging? How did I get myself into that? What were the small, specific abnegation of power or handing over of my power that worked for me until it didn't? What was I going for? How was I spiritually bypassing or using positive mind? This person usually has a strong positive mind. Now, in inner alignment, we don't look to have a positive attitude. We look to have a neutrality, which means there's positive thinking and gratitude and all the love and light. And there's also negative thinking. The negative mind helps us discern when things are getting out of balance and unsafe. So very often this accommodator has a positive mind. They're seeing all the goodness. They're seeing the potential. Potential is an illusion. Potential is an expectation of how someone's going to be, and it's not in reality in this present moment. Does that make sense? Believing in someone's potential is living in fantasy. So this person often has a lot of fantasy or ideas or delusion about this person. That's not true. And then they get shocked by what is true because they were living in the fantasy or the illusion of their positive mind. So what do we in our work do with this person? We build their negative mind. We pull them out of princess fantasy worlds, which we were all brainwashed with the Disney princess movies. We pull them out of this fantasy of what relationship is, and we ground them in what work is there in our relationships, because the fantasy ain't real. And if we're living in spiritually bypassing fantasy or positive mind in our relationship, that can be very dangerous with an unconscious pitta, fire, will chakra constitution. Do you see how it can be dangerous? If you're not seeing, this person's just wanting to get me to do this thing for them, little fucker. That's not nice. You have to be nice to me. So now we talk about boundaries, but I would call them standards of exchange in my day-to-day life. No, I'm not going to give you that. You were not nice to me today. If you'd like me to do that for you, you have to develop kindness and earn that in our relationship. Wow. That's typically what this person is missing. Teaching the pitta-imbalanced or will chakra imbalanced person how to treat them right up from the start. But instead, there's 2 years of bad behavior that gets instilled and really grounded into the relationship. And a lot of this goes back to childhood trauma roles. If I got the tea from my mom when she was mad, then she would be nice to me and I'd feel safe. And therefore, I set up all of my patterns in life around that. So this person has to do their inner work. And when they do their inner work, they show up strong. Like, that's okay. That's not okay. I'd like this. I want more of this. Here's what I'd like to do today. And they start to exert their will. Now, one of two things might happen. This person might be like, there's no room in the relationship for you and your will, and say, screw you. Or this person might get a like, ooh, okay, I just got put in check. And they might like it. Because this person, contrary to popular belief, doesn't want to abuse their power. They just are ignorant most of the time about it. They're not sensitive to relationship. They are clueless about how to earn relationship. And they need to be taught in their most intimate relationships through this person being able to express what they desire and ask for what they want and state what's okay and what's not okay. And that's how we get into really toxic relationship patterns when that's not in place. That's no one's fault. Not one person carries more responsibility, in my opinion, than the other. Each person needs to do their work in the relationship. And the first step is to bring this pattern into awareness. Does everybody have their truth? Does everybody's desires getting met? Is everybody able to express what they desire? Is anyone dependent on someone else to meet their needs? So next week, we'll talk about sex and dependency on someone else to have their needs met. We'll talk about it with respect to sex. We'll talk about it with respect to what can you ask in a relationship? What's ethical? What can we expect our partner to meet? And what are society held beliefs about relationship that we think we're supposed to meet that may or may not apply to your marriage or your intimate relationship? So let's just breathe that in for a few minutes. If you close your eyes and just take that teaching into your relationships, into your life. And as you breathe into your body, just touch into what got imbalanced in your primary relationship. Starting with your responsibility with respect to power in the relationship. We can only control our own life, our own reactions, our own emotions, and build within us that which we desire. So now that you've looked at where your responsibility is, what do you want in your intimate connections? What does balance feel like for you in your relationships? How would that look? See if you can feel that in your body. What you, in your power, with your voice, in your heart, feeling safe and connected and valuable, like you matter and you're seen and heard and loved. No matter who you're with, it just is. And as you feel that, feel what it's like for the law of resonance to decide who can hang in that field with you. People who want to abuse power or take your power actually won't resonate with you because you hold your power. What would it feel like to have the violet flame and have you so connected to your heart such that if someone wants to take too much or give too much, it just doesn't resonate? This goes for the other side, for those of you who are the controllers in the relationship, where you don't take from someone who's giving away their power because it doesn't feel good. leaves a bad taste, or it feels yucky. When someone's trying to get their value through the exchange with you, you don't take their power, you give it right back to them. Because only they can really be their own power. And as you feel this in your body, just allow yourself to imagine what that's going to look like in your relationships, where everybody has their truths and their power and their desires and their say and their value. Everyone gets to be heard and seen and loved. And as you feel that in your body, send the violet flame into your cells as you embody that. And send the violet flame into those relationships that you're thinking of right now. And command the violet flame to restore wholeness in each of you, to restore balance in the relationship. And tell the flame to continue working until that balance has been achieved. And feel that in your cells that you're worthy of that. And seal that in by saying, and so it is done.